Hi, I am Erin DeMarines, and I am the host tonight for Where Do We Get Our Protein? And I just wanted to start by saying a very special thanks to Lisa and the Farm Animal Rights Movement for allowing me in their space to give out this very important information. And it's what I'm so passionate about. I've been a personal trainer for over 20 years. I'm a vegan nutritional coach, health coach. I created a plant-based vegan energy bar called 3 Bar, high in plant protein, dairy-free, soy-free, gluten-free. I'm also a chef. I've helped some local restaurants in this area add plant-based options to their menu, which is so exciting for me that restaurants are now more open to that, because it's great to be able to go out to eat and have at least one option in restaurants that may not normally have options. So it's just really exciting to be able to be here with you. Thank you all for sending in your questions. I am excited to get started. And I wanted to first just start off with talking immediately about what protein is, because I think there's such a misconception that we are bombarded with all this information. And do we really know what it is? And really what protein is amino acids. And it's the building block of over 30,000 proteins in our bodies. It's pretty amazing that we have that many. And there are 11 non-essential amino acids. Those are what our bodies produce on their own. And then there's 9 essential that we critically have to get from food. It's a necessary way to get the 9 amino acids. And that's really important. Those amino acids that we produce, that we don't produce, getting them from food becomes critical, but also confusing, right? Like, how do we know if we're getting the right ones? And that's why I'm here today to talk to you about. So foods that are missing these amino acids are probably foods that we wouldn't normally eat anyway. I think there's a misconception that plants don't contain them, and I'm here to put that myth finally to rest, because all plants contain all 9 essential amino acids. So remember that from the start. All plants contain all 9 essential amino acids. So if you're worried so much about getting what amino acid profile from plants, I'm gonna tell you that you don't need to worry about it. And I think there's just a misconception. And whatever food you're eating, so all foods contain protein, whether you're eating broccoli, whether you're eating potatoes, whether you're eating, if you are non-vegan, whether you're eating chicken, fish, fruits, nuts, vegetables, they all contain proteins. And when we digest that, we break that down into amino acids. The amino acids are then are absorbed into our bloodstream, and then our body knows what to do with it and takes it to the necessary places to build the protein. So your body doesn't know, like, hey, that's a leucine molecule from a piece of chicken, or that's from tofu. It doesn't know how to tag it. So knowing that should take some of the pressure off you of, oh, I don't know if I'm getting the right kinds of proteins. I don't think that should be so much of the focus. So once they're in the bloodstream, our body knows what to do with them. Your body just does what it needs to do with it, and you don't have to think about it so much. So if you are eating with diversity, and I mean diversity like as much different types of foods as you can, you're going to be doing just fine. And what I think we often forget is you don't account for the protein that's in the broccoli, what's in the potato. You don't account for that. So guess what happens? Then you're over the protein limit. And that brings up the very first question that I got today, or got from somebody named Chris, who hopefully is listening. He asked, is having too much protein bad for you? And the short answer is yes, because many of us think it's not, because we're bombarded with all this keto and paleo, that all these diets are so good for you. And that is false. having too much protein can cause long-term health effects. And just like fat and just like carbs, protein has calories. So if you are eating this, absorbing a big amount of protein, you are eating a lot of calories. Again, if you were just eating too much fat or you just eating too many carbs, so it can cause weight gain. And then if you're on one of those diets where you're eating mostly protein and you're taking away the carbohydrates, which would be a lot of your fibrous foods and probably some of your fats, essential fats, like your omega-3s coming from nuts, then you are putting your body in a little bit of a dehydrated state because we have to remove the nitrogen from those high protein foods, and that's what fiber does. And so it's really important to understand that yes, eating too much protein can be a problem, whether it be weight gain. It also causes inflammation, and inflammation long term over time leads to a lot of detrimental health effects, long-term effects. And it also produces too much protein, uric acid. And when you produce that, it's really hard on our kidneys to rid those toxins. So now we have a kidney issue in play. And I think if you can look at it from a health standpoint, why having too much protein is bad for you, you look at it not for the diet aspect, but for longevity. Like, how am I going to feel long term? Am I going to be more reliant on meds? Am I going to be having a kidney issue later on? Am I going to be gaining weight? Because you're not going to be able to sustain a keto or a paleo diet that's so high in protein. It's just, how are we going to live like that? You're not going to have a piece of bread. You're not going to go to a birthday party and have a piece of birthday cake. It just doesn't make the diet easy. It makes it hard. And so if you can wrap your brain around the fact that too much protein causes inflammation, I think that's a good place to start and look at what the benefits of just having a moderate amount of protein and just really looking at eating foods that are diverse. And let's talk about a little bit about how much protein we should be having, because that's a really big misconception. Most of us are eating probably twice as much as we really need. So science is suggesting 0.6 to 0.8 grams per kilogram of body weight. So basically what that means, if you're 130 to 140 pound female, that's really 50 grams a day. And the people that I know and the clients that I've worked with are all above that. They think, oh, a pound of 1 gram per body weight, and they're wrong. Now, if you're a male, about 180 pounds, that would be about 65 grams of protein. I don't know one male that eats 65 grams of protein. We are all overdoing it. So what I'm hoping to do by talking with you today is flip the switch. Let's focus more on fiber. That's really where we need to pay attention to. And again, with a diversity of foods, I think that's really what's important too. And it is okay to consume more protein if you are an athlete, but how much more? Well, of course, that depends on what sports you're doing. That depends on what you weigh, male or female. It depends on a lot of things. And I think that experimenting with that is probably really good. And you're not going to ever be in the hospital for a protein deficiency. So if we're eating with diversity, if we are spreading out the protein at each meal, you're going to be just fine. And that brings up the next question from Karen. What is another good protein source? Okay, well, there's so many protein sources that are really good for you that you probably, like I had said earlier, you probably don't count. Because people think of protein as your fish, your meat, your chicken, your tofu, your edamame. But what about quinoa? What about lentils? I mean, lentils have 18 grams of protein in 1 cup. So for me, that's a huge amount just in one meal. So if that's in one meal, and then you have other things like a potato or a salad or some nuts in your salad or some broccoli, then you add some more protein to that. So if we can start looking at our plates like that, we can really realize that all these foods that do contain protein go to our daily count. And then you can start to look at it and say, okay, I see where I'm way too high in protein. So think about foods like nuts, great source of omega-3s, especially walnuts. They're the highest source protein. Hemp hearts, 10 grams of protein and 3 tablespoons of hemp hearts. You could sprinkle hemp hearts, make sure you get the shelled hemp hearts for absorption. You could sprinkle the hemp hearts in pretty much anything you eat throughout your day. Throw it in your shake. They have no flavor. Put it on a salad. Put it on a baked potato and your pasta, and you're just including these really good sources of protein, but also fiber. What about nutritional yeast? Nutritional yeast has 8 grams of protein and 3 grams of fiber. I'm sure if you're watching and you are plant-based or vegan, you know that nutritional yeast, which we call nooch, goes great on everything. Well, not salads, but like on popcorn and potatoes. And it's such a great, and it's really a good source of B12 too, which some vegans can be low in, not all vegans. Well, that's probably it. We'll save that one for another seminar, another webinar. Okay. What do amino acid profiles tell us about how animal proteins are different from plant proteins and how that affects human health? That's from Jeff. Great question. Well, first and foremost, longevity, right? The guy who's in the gym, who's 16 years old, he probably is not thinking of the long-term effects of those amino acids that are in animal proteins. Amino acids in animal proteins spike our mTOR, our IGF levels go up. These are causing inflammation, long-term health effects. So if you already know that, and you can get all the 9 essential, the ones that you need in your diet, essential amino acids from the plants, then it would always come out ahead of long-term health and inflammation. And that's important to me, and it should be important to you. We don't want to cause inflammation in our bodies. That leads to other things. So we don't want to do that. So we want to stay away from those types of foods. We don't want to spike our IGF levels. This, again, is something that you should care about. What is the most efficient and effective plant protein for endurance athletes? And when to fuel for optimum benefit? This is a question from Sarah. And Sarah, this is a great question because I am an endurance athlete. I've been a triathlete for 15 years. And I am a perfect person to ask this question because I think what you might be looking for is what supplement, if I'm correct, would you include for optimal performance? And so if you're looking for a protein powder, this is key. You would look for a blend of pea protein and brown rice protein. And why is that blend so good or different? It's exactly almost 100% the same profile in amino acids as whey protein, which as vegans, we would never have. But the misconception for so long was that, oh, whey protein is so good for you. And it's really, as an athlete, it's what you should be having because the absorption is so great. But studies now show from Stanford, scientific studies, that it's almost 100% exactly the same amino acid profile. So why would you have the whey protein when you can have this really good absorption from pea and brown rice protein? It's really simple. And so what I would say to you is find one that you like that's palatable, and find one that has 20 grams of protein per serving. And that is probably for an optimal benefit for when you would take it. If you can take it 2 to 2.5 hours before you work out, I think that's a good time. But the problem with that is, what time do you work out? So for me, the only time I can ever get it in is in the morning. So if you're like me and working out is a huge part of your life, then having a supplement like that could be difficult. So just depends. But I also would challenge you to think a little bit more about getting your protein from whole foods as opposed to a protein supplement. But it is, because the protein powders are low calorie, it's good if you're watching calories, right? You get 20 grams of protein or 25 grams of protein with minimal calories and an easy fix, right? Add water, blend it, put whatever you want into it. So that's definitely, from an endurance standpoint, an easy way to get protein in, especially if you're an endurance athlete. But I think what I wanted to talk to you about specifically is try to switch your thought process from maybe getting protein as something for your endurance and switch that to nitrates, because there's good nitrates and there are bad nitrates. Now, the bad nitrates we know comes from mainly from meats, and those are your cured meats, and the nitrates are used to preserve them. So they shoot down a pathway in our body that's not healthy because of what they're packaged with. They're packaged with heme iron. But nitrates from celery, beets, greens, lettuce, those nitrates are really good for you. And they are packaged with polyphenols and vitamin C. So it shoots down a different pathway into our body. And what that does is that may cause the active compound nitrates into nitric oxide. So what does nitric oxide do for endurance athletes? Well, it allows you to go stronger, harder, for longer. And this is important for endurance athletes. Now, the problem with that is who's eating beets for breakfast. So there is a beetroot powder. So if you were going to do a protein shake, I would suggest to you to add beetroot powder to your shake. I don't do shakes in the morning before I work out. So the night before I know I'm going to do a long run or a long workout, will include beets in my last meal of the night. And I can tell a difference in my run on the days that I don't do that. So it's really noticeable. So good nitrates from beets, celery, leafy greens are really good for endurance, and good for anybody, truthfully. But since we're on that topic, I thought I would share that with you. That way, maybe you could then start including that for endurance. All right, so the next question. Oh, before I forget. So how does that do that, the nitric oxide? Because it requires your body to do the oxygen that your body requires to do the same amount of work when eating these high in nitrate foods. So it makes your body so much more efficient, and cardiovascular performance in the endurance world is huge. So start including beets into your supplementation, or beetroot powder. Okay, on to the next question. Naoma, when will the dairy industry realize they are inhumane and their time has come and gone? Wish they would know this now. I mean, I think they know we're knocking on their door, right? I mean, the world is changing. And I think we're just going to have to be patient. And I could go down this whole rabbit hole about that. And I think a lot of it is government and people's jobs. And I wish I could make the change, because the dairy industry is really awful. And I would suggest, if you can, get involved at a local level, because I think that's the only way to get our voices heard. Write letters, call your constituents. I mean, just make yourself heard. And that's the best thing you can do, obviously, and get more people to go plant-based. I mean, isn't that why we are here right now, learning where do we get our protein from, right? We want to know that information so we can spread that. That's what I do. All right. Next question is from Rachel. How to get enough protein for 3 workouts a week and other exercise? Okay. Well, first, this is going to depend on your weight and also the type of workout you're doing. So if you are doing like a CrossFit heavy workout, or if you're an athlete that's a triathlete and you're doing brick workouts, like swim to bike to run, then your protein requirement would be a little higher. So I think that the most important thing you can do is figure out what your weight is, multiply that by 0.6 or 0.8, somewhere in there, and sort of figure out what your total grams of protein would be. And then you're going to divide that up into 3 meals or 4 meals or however many meals you eat in a day, because that is really the best way to spread it out to get that protein spike at every meal. Instead of trying to get all your protein in one meal, you're going to hit a ceiling, and then that extra protein doesn't get utilized. We want to make sure that we use that protein divided out between all the meals. And that way we get those protein spikes throughout the day. And that's going to keep you consistent energy wise. That's going to be great because then it keeps you fueled for your workouts. So I think that that's the best way to answer this question. And again, don't forget to account for not only the protein that you assume is protein, you have to also account for the protein that is kind of hidden in some of those other foods like broccoli or Brussels sprouts, because there's protein in all of those, spinach. So then you need to focus on that. And again, just spread it out. I think that's the best way to supplement. I'm not a huge fan. I'm more of like a minimalist when it comes to supplementation, because I really truly believe, because I used to be a big protein powder girl back in the day and always worried about how many grams of protein. And once I took a lot of that away, and once I became, a nutritional consultant and studied this and learned over the years and took all of that away, I've gotten in way better shape, which is strange, right? So you think, oh, you're adding protein. Again, it's probably too much protein. So that's what I want you to focus on. This next question is one of my favorites. It's from Dana. She says, I am addicted to cheese. Vegan cheese is all right, but not the same, especially on pizza. What are some tips to get off casein that is found in dairy? Huh. Well, you're addicted to dairy because dairy is an addictive source of protein. It's mildly addicting because of the casein, which your body breaks down into casomorphins, and that they attach the dopamine levels, like the opiates, and they attach the dopamine receptors in your brain, which triggers your cravings for dairy. So the government is good, and the dairy industry is good. They know how to get you to stay addicted. So I know this is going to be hard, but you can do it. You should start slow. And there are 91, probably more, different variations of plant-based cheese on the market right now. There's clearly probably one you haven't tried. So my suggestion would be to wherever you live is to maybe go to some local markets and find some of those dairy-free cheeses that you can try, because I am guaranteeing you that there is one of them you will like. And then just start slow. Maybe you start off with half your pizza with vegan cheese, half with not. And then the next time you do a little bit more. And remember, it's not perfect. Like, no one's checking to see how perfect you are at this. But the fact that you've asked this great question shows that you're open. And that's why I'm here, is I want to reach out to you for this and get you to see that these small changes and the fact that you want to make this change is what we all want for in the vegan plant-based world. That's what we want. We want people to be open to it. So if it's not perfect and you mess up, no one's going to get mad at you. But we're going to applaud you for trying. And we're going to applaud you for being open to trying different cheeses. And if you haven't tried, there's one I love so much, the BioLife Feta. It is like crack. It's so good. And it is good on everything. So even pizza. So maybe start with that one and maybe try it and see how it goes from there. And you can also make your own nutritional yeast, cashews, tons of recipes on the internet to try your own as well. Who knows? Maybe you'll turn into a vegan cheese maker. You never know. But it's a great question. And really, that's why you crave it, is because the dopamine levels in your brain, when you get that cheese, it's like, oh, it's feeding it. So you're right to feel that way. And people always ask me, oh my God, I can never give up cheese. And they're right. It is harder than giving up probably hamburgers, because the Impossible or Beyond Meat burgers taste so similar. So hopefully that helped you. But again, go slow, experiment, try different cheeses. And I have to tell you too, when I, because how I became vegan in the first place was I had a triathlon coach and we were running and he said to me, what bothers you? He was vegan, but he didn't push his veganism on me. This was many years ago, like 25 years ago. And I said, I'm constantly congested when I run. I always felt this sort of, I don't know, congestion. And he said, you're probably lactose intolerant. I was like, well, I don't really eat that much dairy. And he said, for 3 days, I want you to give it up. Let me tell you, after 3 days, the difference that I felt running was just so noticeable and remarkable. I was like, how is this even possible? So that's what triggered me to then start studying and getting into nutrition. So it changed my trajectory of my career path. And so it just takes just one person to like reach out and talk to you about something that maybe you just didn't realize. And then once you do, the rest is history. And you know what's more meaningful to you is it's not me. I'm sure it's not meaningful for you to support the dairy industry. It's not meaningful for any of us, right? So maybe focus on that too. Focusing on what's meaningful to you. And maybe that needs to be like your postcard that you stick up on the mirror every day. What is meaningful to you? Okay, on to the next question. What do you recommend for pre and post workout for women weightlifters? Yes, that's from Jade. Jade, I love lifting weights. But I'm going to go back to what I was talking about before, the beetroot powder. I'm going to suggest that to you because I think for the pre-workout, I think that's a great way to go because again, it gives you that feeling of working harder with less exertion, which means you're going to be able to lift more. I mean, this is just a fact. That's what nitric oxide does in our bodies. So how about pre-workout, if you can do it 2 to 2.5 hours before you weight lift, is include a beetroot powder maybe in your protein shake if you're doing protein shakes, or just a beetroot powder with some water in a shaker cup. I think you will start to notice the difference and then it'll be on. You'll be doing a great workout with less exertion, and that's what we want. So, and then post-workout, I always say just have a balanced meal. You work out hard, especially lifting weights. I think coming out of that, if you're not starving right away, listen to your body. And again, what is meaningful to you? Is it to have something fattening, or is it meaningful because you just did something so good for your body, you want to eat healthy? And I think that's where I would start. And again, when I talked before about taking the protein components to our meals in our day, or the protein grams, and splitting them up into equal parts, approximately, maybe 20 grams per meal, or whatever that number is for you, makes a lot more sense as far as a post-workout meal, right? So that you're getting protein, carbs, and fat. Every time we eat in balance like that, our bodies will thank us. And that's what's really important. So for weightlifting, try the beetroot powder. I think you will see and feel, more importantly, feel the difference. And hopefully I'll get a thank you note from you saying how much it affected your workouts. Okay, another really good question from Lauren. How to best address the question, where do you get your protein to non-vegans? The proverbial eye roll is usually what I do, but we can't do that all the time. It's a good question and one I've been hearing about for 25 years. So my simple answer is I get my protein the same place you get your animal gets their protein from, right? I mean, you just look at a horse's body and you see how lean and muscular and beautiful it is. What are they eating? I mean, I think that's the easiest way to talk to meat eaters is just put it back onto them. Like, why does it matter to you? If I look good and I feel good, why do you care about where I'm getting my protein from? But if they're inquiring because they are open to it, now that's a different response, right? I would talk to them about getting your protein from all these other sources because they might not know that edamame is so high in protein and so good for you and contains all the 9 essential amino acids that meat does. So I think providing them with that kind of information is really what's important, because the science behind it is really what they should be open to, and not just an opinion. I mean, that's why I'm here, right? We're talking about scientific facts that are proven, not my opinion. It's not like I'm getting a kickback from the vegan society, right? This is knowledge that you can find if you are curious. Stanford puts out so many newsletters about just these specific topics, and it's my go-to for a lot of the studies that I find so fascinating. So the quick answer is I get my protein the same place your animal gets it. But again, the door is open. You might just want to walk through it and give them a little bit more information, and maybe treat them to a Beyond Meat burger just to get them started down that path, because it tastes just as good and it's full of great protein, but without all this cholesterol and the saturated fats. So hopefully that answered your question. Oh, this not last one, but this one is a tough one for me. It's from Alyssa, and she asks, how can I convince my family to go vegan? Well, most of my family is vegan. My mom, my dad, and my sister, they are all vegan. So obviously I've convinced them. But my husband and my daughter are not. And that it is very challenging. And it's emotionally hard on me, because I'm so passionate about plant-based and vegan eating, and I have a vegan energy bar on the market. I mean, it's my life's work. It's everything I think about. I'm working with these restaurants. I get so inspired by the fact that they're open to it. So why can't I do that in my own family? And I think that's probably what you're asking. So the word convince there is hard, because you don't really want to convince anybody if they're not open to it. So my advice to you is to be the light, right? Just be the light. Try not to convince them. So sort of bring it back in, relax a little bit, and just do you. You have control of what you put into your mouth, the same as I do. I cannot control what my husband eats, and it's okay, because 90% of the time he's eating vegan anyway, because I cook every night. So maybe that's sort of how you lean into this a little bit, right? You cook these awesome meals, experiment, try new things, try new recipes. Maybe they'll be more open to it. Maybe don't tell them it's vegan. Maybe make a meal over here for you, make something for them, but it's the same. I don't know. I think that's how I would approach it. And also ask for them to be involved. Say, hey, I'm going to try this new recipe. I'd love for you to try it. I think that's a good place to start. But I think trying to convince them is the wrong way to go. Because what if they were trying to convince you to eat meat, right? You'd be offended, and right, even though we know it's the healthier choice, and most people do now, it's still a hard place to be when it's in your own home. And I've always said you cannot be a preacher in your own home. I mean, you just can't. So be light with it, not talk about it too much. Maybe just lead by example. And I think you have to be patient, because the world is changing, but it may not change quick enough in your own home, which sometimes is really hard, but you can do it. Can we have a class in Spanish? Says Cheryl. Un poquito, this one over here speaks a little Spanish, but not enough. So I think if we could set that up with Lisa and the farm animal rights movement, I would love to have like an interpreter do the class with me. And sure. So maybe reach out to the farm animal rights movement and maybe post that question to them. And I would love to be involved with that. And hopefully that answered your question. Okay, so this question is from Diane. Diane says, I have been excited about all the varieties of plant-based food products introduced and have tried many of them, but I am disappointed and unlikely to continue with them due to the additives and chemicals in them. Do you think that this problem will be resolved? Good question, really good question. The answer is yes. Companies like Beyond Meat and Impossible are already making their products better, healthier, with less saturated fat. But I think my question to you would be, if you're eating them regularly, and that's like your main choice, I don't know if that is the healthiest way to go. But again, I'm not here to convince you to not eat them or to eat them. I'm here to explain where do we get our protein from. And this question poses a different kind of conversation. But I think if you knew what goes into meat before it gets to your plate, or chicken, or fish, there are so many more additives and so many more chemicals that you should be worried about that you don't know about. Whereas all these plant-based companies, they list them all out. And when you might not know what some of these additives or words or descriptions, like what they mean, how do you know that those are bad for you? And I think that will lead me to another question that somebody just posted about the gums in milk, right? These are additives and people get freaked out. Oh my God, what are they? I can't pronounce them. And I'm always an advocate of you should be able to read every ingredient on a label, because the more you eat clean, the better your body digests and the leaner you will always be. But food has evolved, right? I mean, we don't come from a time where we're picking the food out of our gardens and killing the food that we're going to eat, right? Food has evolved. And a lot of these additives and chemicals have evolved too. They aren't always necessarily bad for you. Now, you'd have to take each one separately for me to say, oh yeah, that's not good, or that's fine. But I think just because you don't recognize the word, you might just assume that it's really bad. And I think you're wrong. I think we need to, again, limit them. You don't have to have, if you're eating Beyond Meat burgers every single night for dinner, maybe not the best choice. Let's swap that out for some lentils one night. So I think that would be a place for you to start, is don't eat them then if it bothers you. But I'm telling you for a fact that not all these additives and chemicals that you're reading on the backs of these labels are bad for you, because you will never see that on a package of ground beef. They're not going to ever list all the chemicals and additives, and they claim that it's, humanely raised and all these. It's not true. There's a way that it's hidden. So I think if you realize that plant-based companies are really trying to be transparent, I think it's still a really good choice. And again, we're not here to have a perfect diet. That's boring. You're never not going to eat a piece of birthday cake or bread, or people are just worried about what they're eating. I had a client that came today. She's like, oh, I think I'm doing really good. I don't eat any bread or any pasta. And I was like, okay, no, we have to readjust our thinking. Again, where do we get our protein from? We're all too high in protein. So I think that that's a good place for you to still realize that making those choices are better. They're always going to be better. And eating with variety is always going to be better too. So hopefully that answered your question. But if you have specific ingredients you want to know in some of these things, you can certainly reach out to me. I would certainly love to go down that path with you. That way you would maybe feel better about consuming those products. Next question is from Heather. What is your best and intelligent answer when meat eaters ask you how you stay healthy? Well, what looks healthy on the outside isn't always what's healthy on the inside. And I think the easiest way to answer that is you can't judge a book by its cover. And I am a plant-based person and I am really healthy. Are you healthy? I would put it back on them. Why are you asking me that? From a plant-based diet, it's so much healthier than what they're eating. They, again, are just misinformed because they don't think that plant-based diets have the 9 essential amino acids. And since we know that that is not true, I think that's a good place for you to start. And maybe you can take them to the grocery store and show them. Look at a block of tofu, how much protein is in it, and what's in it. Soybeans, that's it. So I think that's a good way to talk about what you're eating, and also diversity, right? Again, the more diverse, the better foods, the better for our microbiome. And that's huge for gut health. And gut health leads to a lot of other issues in our bodies, right? So the most important thing is to eat with diversity. And that's what I would tell them. They are really reliant upon, let's say, chicken, fish, red meat, and I guess what, turkey? So those are four things. Can you think of, I mean, quinoa, beans, nuts, vegetable. I mean, we have all these sources of protein when they really are focused on like those four. So you're getting a way healthier diet. Hopefully that helped answer that question. Okay, from Lara, what is my opinion of protein powders? Well, I'm not a huge fan of protein powders personally because I like to eat whole foods. I've experimented with protein powders and it's not, to me, I'm also a lot of times not at home able to make shakes. A lot of times I am running around. And so protein powders to me aren't always the easiest, but if they're easy for you, there is definitely a place for them in your diet. Again, the blend of pea protein and brown rice protein, that combination is the best you can get. So easily digestible. You're going to get the right amount of the right amino acid profile. You can look for the leucine. Should be about 2 grams of leucine to know that it's a very good quality brown rice and pea protein blend. And I think that's a good place to start. And then find one that you like, a flavor that's palatable, you can mix easy, and that's convenient. Let's make this convenient, right? Because if it's too much preparation, we tend to then fall by the wayside. And then you asked about soy and tempeh as well. And I'm a huge fan. Tempeh to me is great. I love tempeh bacon. So soy depends. I'm not like a huge soy fan. Like I don't eat it all the time, but there's definitely a place for it in my diet. And then you asked about the gum in the plant-based milk. And again, that goes back to what I was just talking about is not all additives are bad for you. You just have to, again, read ingredients, but in small amounts, the gums in plant-based milks are not bad for you. And then I've got another question here from Debbie. Excessive protein on bone density. Absolutely. And I talked about that early on, right? So too much protein, uric acid, hard on our kidneys, causes inflammation. These things definitely can affect bone density. More importantly, protein, dairy protein, right? The galactose, the sugar in the dairy actually leaches the calcium from our bones. So it's the opposite that milk does a body good. Let's see here. Karen, what about people who reference the Bible? Sure, I know how to answer that one. Well, I would just say that maybe that's a conversation that they should see a nutritionist about. I am about facts and science, and that's what we're here for today, is to learn about where we get our protein from based on scientific evidence from the top scientists in the world. And that's what we're learning, we're studying. Golden hour. Debbie is asking, have a protein and carbs 1 hour before workout. Sure, you can. But for maximum amount of absorbency, I would say maybe a little bit longer before your workout. And I would include that beetroot powder, right? Totally great for endurance, super easy to absorb. And I know you will notice a difference. I haven't said enough about beetroot powder. You will notice a difference. Or beets. More importantly, eat the beets. But if you're talking about a protein and carbs before a workout, that's fine. But again, I would give yourself a little bit more time. And a lot of athletes supplement with caffeine. I am one of those. I love having just a little bit of caffeine, nothing crazy before a workout in the morning, cup of tea, just to give me that little extra boost. All that does is give you the feeling of that you can get through it. It's not really doing much to our bodies unless you're, of course, having excess, and that's a whole nother conversation. Eric is asking, where do you get your protein? Well, I have named off all the foods that I eat. I definitely use my energy bars. They have 12 and 13 grams of protein. So I supplement with these all the time. They're usually my afternoon snack with a cup of coffee, like midday. Sometimes I have them in the morning to break my breakfast, because I'm not a huge breakfast fan. But I get my protein from every source we talked about: quinoa, nuts, greens, just legumes. Like that is my main source of protein because I love it. And there's so many different kinds. I mean, black beans have the most polyphenols out of any of the beans. Huge, great for your gut. So great. And once you start experimenting with these, you'll feel the difference. And I think that's the key is I think you need to experiment and take it slow. Introduce, if you're switching some of your protein sources out, start with some lentils and maybe one, like a half a cup or a third of a cup at a serving, as a serving, and just go slow into it. Because again, you're introducing more fiber. So when you take away some of this protein, you got to bring in some of the fiber, which is going to be great for you. But at first you might feel a little bit, you could feel a little bloated, a little gassy, but it's okay. Take your time. You're going to get there and you'll thank me for it later on. What vegetables has the most protein? That is from Jane. Well, dark leafy greens are the highest. So I would stick to, and I would say like broccoli. Those are the higher protein vegetables and mushrooms. And include those in your diet all the time. More the better. And always include things like quinoa and nutritional yeast. I've talked about these things a little bit throughout this presentation, right? Quinoa and nutritional yeast and hemp hearts. They're full of protein, not too high in calories. And also you can just sort of add them to different, whatever you're making. Like my perfect salad that I make always has a quinoa, a kale, a nut, beets. And I try to make that every week for at least part of my meals for the week, because then I know I'm getting such diversity with the food. And that's what's key here. And that's what I've talked about this whole time. Eating with diversity is going to be so good for your body. Feeding that flora, feeding that microbiome, and just getting to a healthier place. And once you get to that place and you are feeling healthier, you're going to hopefully then that'll be the motivation for you to get out the door and exercise, because you can't, all this stuff that we talked about exercise, and I'll end it soon. You can't do any of this if you're interested in getting in shape without the exercise. That's first, right? You got to walk out the door, put your running shoes on, get out the door, go for a walk. And you can't do that without the exercise component. And then comes your diet, right? And then comes all the other things like stress and family life and sleep, right? All those things come into play. But we're here today to talk about where you get your protein, and hopefully I've answered all your questions. If you do have more questions, I would love to hear from you. You can reach out on Instagram at Erin DeMarines or at eFit Foods. Both of those places will reach me. And if you have questions that you want me to answer that I didn't get answered for you today, then please reach out to me, because this was a lot to get in and that information get in this time frame. But your questions are really good and really thoughtful, and I appreciate that. Like those questions to me means that people are starting to really pay attention to what they're eating, and that's great, and that's really important. So contest winner is Dana. So Dana, please email us your contact info at erin@efitfoods.com so we can send out your swag. And again, if anybody has any other questions, comments, please reach out, and I would love to answer anything I didn't get to today. But again, eat with diversity. Don't worry so much about the number of grams of protein, because you're probably getting enough from a lot of foods that you don't know have protein, and that counts towards your total. So then you'll probably drop a few pounds too, if that's important to you. And remember, just be the light, because convincing people to go vegan is not the way to go. Just be the light and the example. And hopefully they will see the change, and they'll see the change in you. They'll see how your skin looks, how your body looks, how your energy levels are, and they'll wonder, and they'll ask you. And that's when you tell them, I'm a plant-based diet. I'm on a plant-based, that's how I eat. And I think that's important. I get that question all the time. Why does your skin look so good? I say, because I'm vegan and I eat all these great foods. And that to me is a great ending to a great webinar. And I hope to be at another one soon. So let me know if you have more questions, and I will, I just was reminded, eating out. Oh, that was when we were talking about the plant-based, the Beyond Meat. Whoever asked about the Beyond Meat with when you're eating out. So that's why I think Beyond Meat and Impossible Burgers are so good, right? If you are eating out as a vegan and you're at a place and that's the only option, still a great option. At least they have the option. Appreciate that. Thank the restaurant manager, thank the owner, thank the waitress. Hey, thanks for at least having this. I think um, that is an excellent option to have, and an option. I mean, you can go to Kentucky Fried Chicken now and get Beyond Meat chicken nuggets, and they're good. But also when you're eating out, the key is to ask the chef, hey, what do you have for a vegan? And if their answer is a baked potato and a salad, maybe we don't go back to this restaurant. Or you say, hey, would you be open to ever thinking about creating something vegan? A lot of times they'll create something for you that's not on the menu that's really good. And they also really appreciate that you've asked and that you care enough to see what they could come up with. So don't forget that little tip. And the more you ask, the more that the world is going to hear your voice. And that's my passion. So thank you so much for taking your time out on a Wednesday night. I know it's close to dinner time, and hopefully you make some good choices, and hope to see you again soon. Thank you so much.